Good to be back with you. I'm Katie Tur. Well, guys, we've got some breaking news on Capitol Hill. The plan to empower Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry, which we've been talking about for a couple days now, is now dead, according to multiple GOP lawmakers who have spoken to NBC News. Just like Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, the option for a temporary speaker did not have the votes, at least not for now. It is hard to overstate what a mess the Republican-led House is. Today in their so-called family meeting, the room got so emotional. Matt Gaetz confirmed that McCarthy started yelling at him, and Punchbowl News reports another lawmaker nearly lunged at him.
I think his passions are a little inflamed. I think he's working through the stages of grief and might be at the anger part.
Did Congressman Goss lunge at you as well?
What's that?
Did Congressman Goss lunge at you as well?
I think he was pretty animated. I don't know if I would describe it as a lunge.
What did you say that caused McCarthy to yell at you?
Well, I don't know. I said that I thought that having Speaker Light was a bad idea. I think Republicans ought to stay in our conference until we elect a speaker. I think we got a lot of great folks. I'm supporting Jim Jordan. That'll be how it goes.
Joining us now, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale and Punchbowl News co-founder and MSNBC political contributor Jake Sherman. Ali, what is going on?
It's a good question, Katie. I think a lot of us are trying to figure that out from our sources, because I talked to lawmakers on the Republican side in this hallway as they were leaving a 3+ hour long meeting in the room behind me, which is still closed door, but I don't think anyone's left in there. The general consensus that I heard from Republican lawmakers was the idea of empowering McHenry in some kind of bipartisan resolution fashion is dead, to use the words of Vern Buchanan. Now, there are some Republican members who are still clinging to this idea. Potentially Congressman Joyce can make some tweaks based on feedback he got from inside this conference meeting today. But by and large, Republicans are not thrilled about doing anything in an interim fashion. They instead want to just get back to the business of electing a speaker. And in this instance, when I've talked to Patrick McHenry, the current Speaker Pro Tem, and others, he has said his job right now and his goal is to elect the next speaker, which is Jim Jordan. And Jordan right now is saying he's still staying in the race. Part of why he had initially endorsed the idea of some kind of temporary resolution strategy was to allow the House to function while also giving Jordan himself the time to cobble together more votes. Now it seems like that time is out the window. The clock is still ticking down, and they're no closer to having any idea of who will be speaker, let alone what their next steps even are, Katie.
Let me play what Jim Jordan just said about all this a moment ago.
We made the pitch to members on the resolution as a way to lower the temperature and get back to work. We decided that wasn't where we're going to go. I'm still running for speaker, and I plan to go to the floor and get the votes and win this race. But I want to go talk with a few of my colleagues. Particularly, I want to talk with the 20 individuals who voted against me so that we can move forward and begin to work for the American people.
So, Jake, what's he going to say to those 20 individuals to get them to support him now when they wouldn't support him earlier today or yesterday?
Better question, Katie, is what is he going to say that's new? It's not like he hasn't talked to these people yet. They are opposed to him. They remain opposed to him. And there have been more Republicans who have come out who have said they won't vote for him. Brian Fitzpatrick, moderate from Pennsylvania, for one, has said he will not vote for Jim Jordan. I don't know what's going to unlock this, Katie, but let's just take a step back here. This is now a crisis. This is now a government or a branch of the government in the middle of a massive crisis. There is no speaker. There is no third in line to the president. There is no way to pass a government funding bill in less than a month. There's no way to get aid to Israel. There's no way to get aid to Ukraine. The House has been closed down now for 16 days, aside from a few speaker votes, and they have no way out. Zero way out. They can't elect a speaker. They can't elect a speaker pro tem. They can't elect the former speaker. This is a complete disaster for Republicans. And if you're a Democrat, Katie, to be honest with you, and you want to, and who knows how long this holds over and if it has salience next November, but if you want a picture of a body of a political party that's just simply unable to govern, forget chew and walk and chew gum at the same time. They can't even walk. This is a conference in massive crisis with absolutely no way of fixing it.
The government shutdown deadline, the continuing resolution, lasts until November 17th. It might seem like that's a few weeks away. Yes, it is, but there are not that many working days between now and then, and that's when the government will no longer be able to function without another continuing resolution or a budget deal. At what point do the moderate Republicans, the ones, maybe the frontliners like Mike Lawler of New York, Molinaro, whoever, go to the Democrats? Do they ever go to the Democrats and say, we got to figure something out?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess I'll wait for Ali to interject as well, but I don't think that's going to happen.
So what happens next, Jake? I mean, if we're in crisis, they can't walk. How long does this stay in crisis?
Katie, that's what this was. This was going to the Democrats and saying, help bail us out for 2 months so we could get our life together and we don't look like such clowns for another month or 3 months or whatever it is. They were unable to do that. And Katie, remember, November 17th isn't far away. It takes the Senate a week to do anything. It'll take the House a week to do something. So, like, they need to have government funding built next week, effectively. I mean, I don't think we realize how big of a crisis this is. And it's not like they're going to elect Hakeem Jeffries Speaker. And I just want to add one more caveat. Just because this is dead among Republicans does not mean it's really dead. This is a privilege resolution. So any member could bring it up. They could put it on the floor, and it would they'd have to be recognized on the floor, but it would be afforded a vote within a certain period of time. So this could still happen. It's still a long shot because not a lot of Republicans are for it, but it still could happen, especially if this lasts a few more days.
Ali, I've got a Republican lawmaker waiting in the wings, but I want to give you the last word on this. What else do you want to add to this?
I think he's right to point out that this isn't 100% dead. I mean, it's spooky season. Anything can come back to life, I guess. There are Democrats who I've spoken to who are very eager to do what it takes to get the government open again. And this is only a temporary solution. So as much as it might be okay to open the government until the 17th of November or even until January 3rd of next year, it still means they're going to have to figure out a resolution. And I think the political point is well made. Whether or not this lasts until November, the only consistent Democratic talking point that Hakeem Jeffries and other Democrats has had is that these Republicans are extreme and chaotic. That's exactly what they look like right now. They are unable to govern. They're unable to even choose who could lead them. Truthfully, I've had members asking who's even calling the shots. It's like a really bad game of who's on first right now for Republican conference members because it's not even really clear who's leading them. Yes, technically it's McHenry, but it's really difficult to even suss out who leadership is and who's calling the shots at this point. So it's just mass confusion here, and that's exactly the Democratic talking point being made for them.
Ali Vitale, Jake Sherman, thank you. Joining us now, Republican Congressman from North Carolina, Greg Murphy. Congressman, thank you very much. Who is leading the conference right now?
Well, Patrick McHenry is the Speaker pro tem, and he is arranging things to move forward. The Speaker nominee is Jim Jordan, and that's who is conducting the business of the House. I was listening to your other members there. This is disruptive in a way, but Republicans, our greatest asset is our individualism, our rugged individualism, and here we're seeing sometimes our greatest challenge is our individualism. This was all started by one individual who seemingly loves the limelight and everything he can squeeze out of it. And sadly enough, it's put us in a bit of a quandary right now as we move forward. The government is being funded right there, by the way, by one of your commenters. The government is being funded. People are being paid. So the government is still functioning.
Those are reporters. The government's, yes, being funded. It will continue to be funded until November 17th, and then it no longer has funding. Are you confident that Republicans will have a leader by then in order to pass a bill? Why are you so confident? It's been 2 weeks. Why are you so confident today?
Well, because, we had Steve Scalise that came up as number 2, and there were some folks that didn't like him. Same thing with Jim Jordan, both for different reasons. But I do think that we have a very deep bench of individuals that don't carry some of the characterizations that some of the conference still have. And so I think we have some really, really smart people, not only intellectually, but politically, who can lead the conference. Whether Jim understands that, I think personally, if he gets one more vote and doesn't have it, he needs to step aside like like McCarthy and Scalise did. We will have one because the country needs to concentrate on the things that are going wrong with the country. Our absolute open borders by the Biden administration now, where even sanctuary cities are screaming for help. Who knows how many Hamas or Chinese Communist Party people have come in on the southern border. These are the things that are worrying America today. We'll get our act together and we'll be able to pull back and govern and actually get America back on track.
That was a real turn. Sir, who is the Republican in the conference right now who can lead the conference, and why haven't we seen them?
Oh, I think they've been waiting for things to play out. Sometimes there's a compromise candidate. Look at Boehner that came through, and then Paul Ryan. So I do think there are other individuals. I'll say Kevin Hern is an excellent individual. He heads the Republican Study Caucus right now. Very, very smart, very, very successful businessman. There's Mike Johnson, who led the Republican Study Committee also. Both are highly respected within the community. So I think we have to get out some of the tensions right at this point, but we absolutely have other folks that are ready to step to the plate and do the job as Speaker.
If you are a voter in a swing district come next November and you're trying to choose between a Democrat and a Republican and they're thinking about what's going on right now, what is your argument to that voter that they should entrust the Republicans again?
Well, look at what's happening with inflation. They go to the grocery store and they can't afford things that they could before. Their real wages
But the government's not working at all right now, so any of those problems is just not getting addressed because Republicans can't figure out who to lead them.
Katie, the government is working right now. The leadership
is having issues. You haven't been able to pass a single bill or put anything to the floor in 2 weeks other than a vote for Speaker, and that keeps failing.
We don't pass bills when we're in recess. So again, what matters to the American public is our overrun of the southern border. What matters is inflation. What matters is gas prices that people can't afford. Those are the things that matter to the American people. We'll get our stuff together in a row. Democracy is messy, and with the 24/7 news cycle, you see it every moment. We'll get our stuff together. What things really matter to the American people are the disastrous policies of this administration.
Congressman, thank you very much for joining us. We do hope a speaker gets elected soon so things can start moving again. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Coming up next, signs the Israeli... President Biden is back from the Middle East. The UN says it is on the verge of delivering humanitarian aid through the Rafah border, and Western nations are now warning their residents to get out of neighboring countries. Are these all signs the would-be Israeli ground incursion into Gaza is about to happen? There are now even more tanks at the border. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak tells NBC News a difficult and bloody ground assault is likely in the coming days. And Israel's defense minister just told troops they will soon see Gaza from the inside. President Biden is going to speak to this nation, the U.S., tonight. Is he going to address any of this? And what will he say regarding the effort to free both American hostages and rescue American Palestinians who are still trapped within Gaza? Joining us now from Ashdod, Israel, is NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez. So, Raf, I want to begin with what could be happening soon. We're seeing a lot of signs pointing to movement along the Gaza-Israel border. What can you tell us you're hearing from just outside of the border?
Katie, a lot of signs. Israel's defense minister was just a couple miles south of us. He was meeting Israeli troops, and as you said, he basically told them, prepare for the ground offensive. We still don't know exactly when it's going to come. There is a bit of a diplomatic guessing game going on. The conventional wisdom is that the Israelis won't launch the ground invasion while there is a Western leader in town. We had President Biden here yesterday. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was here today. He's gone on to Saudi Arabia to meet the Crown Prince there, Mohammed bin Salman. We were expecting French President Emmanuel Macron to come here at some point in the coming days, but it's very possible that the Israelis may surprise all of us and announce that they are going ahead with this ground offensive potentially in the middle of the night, any night coming. Katie, the Israeli military also updating today. It has informed 203 Israeli families that they have loved ones being held hostage inside of Gaza. We have been speaking to the families of those hostages all week. Their stories are unbelievable. We met a woman today called Osnat. Four members of her extended family, she believes, are being held hostage in Gaza. One of them is her little cousin, Ohad. He's 8 years old. He's turning 9 on Monday, and she told us a little bit about him. Take a listen.
Ohad is only a child. He wears glasses. he cannot manage without his glasses, and we don't know if he is with his glasses or not. This is something that weighs a lot on his father, that he always talks about. What about Ohad's glasses? I hope they let him keep it.
And Katie, with all the horror we have seen and we have heard over the last couple of weeks, there is something about that jumped out at me, that there is a little boy in Gaza tonight who's afraid, who's in a dark place, and he may not be able to see because he doesn't have his glasses.
It is just so awful. It is just so awful to contemplate. Raf Sanchez, thank you very much. And it's been 2 days since the explosion at a hospital in central Gaza. Anger and violence is continuing to flare up across the Middle East over it, especially in the occupied West Bank. And that is where Sky News' Stuart Ramsey has more from the ground. Watch. They're calling for a ceasefire. The UN is also calling for a ceasefire. There have been, though, an uptick in attacks against the U.S. military overseas. In Syria, at least 2 drones targeted American forces yesterday. That is according to 2 defense officials. 2 defense officials also say the USS Carney has shot down more than a dozen drones that were threatening the ship. As of yesterday, the ship was transitioning through the Suez Canal. Joining us, NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube. So, Courtney, what is the latest on this?
Yeah, there's really been an uptick in these drone attacks in that region, Katie. We started hearing about them yesterday from U.S. Central Command when they told us about an attack in northern Iraq that the U.S. forces shot down. That was 1 drone. And then 2 in western Iraq. 2 drones targeted al-Assad, an air base where U.S. military operate. One of them was shot down. The other one was shot at, but as it fell to the ground, it broke up into pieces, and some of those pieces hit a hangar, and some U.S. forces were injured inside. Well, then we just learned today about 2 more drones that attacked a U.S. military garrison in southern Syria known as Atanf. It's the same case. In the same case, one of those drones was shot down, but another one was not. It targeted and landed, hitting the base. Several U.S. military were injured. And then, of course, now we're also learning just moments ago some new details about a U.S. destroyer that was in the Middle East, in that region, when it was targeted by a number of drones. U.S. officials telling us that they shot down many of those drones. But this is a real uptick from what we have been hearing in recent weeks and months about activities from what are expected at this point. The U.S. is still analyzing, investigating these incidents, but at this point they are pointing towards Iranian-backed militias being behind these drone attacks, Katie.
What is the concern among those at the Pentagon that not just a second front is going to open up, but potentially a third front on the Syria border with Israel?
There is a lot of concern. So right now, the concern, as you said, is that it's going to open up another front. Or this war that's right now is in Israel and Gaza, spreads outside those borders into the regions. And one of the things we've been hearing about for basically since the attack in Israel almost 2 weeks ago is concern among U.S. military officials that one of the ways that it could spread, that it could manifest, is attacks by these Iranian-backed militias in other areas outside of Israel. They were talking about Iraq, talking about Syria. I'm not saying this is the beginning of some big campaign, but for now, it's been an uptick in what we have seen in recent months in this sort of activity, Katie.
Courtney Kube. Courtney, thank you very much. And fresh off of his trip to the Middle East, President Biden will make his second ever Oval Office address in just a few hours from now. Joining us now is Senior Fellow in the American Statecraft Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Aaron David Miller. Thanks again for being with us. So the president left Israel yesterday. He was received very warmly in that country, not so much the region. He's going to speak to Americans tonight. What is it likely that he's going to say? And is it something that's going to calm things down? It certainly feels very tense right now.
You know, when it comes to foreign policy, the American public these days is focused on it as little as possible. They only tend to really focus when it involves American security and prosperity. An escalation, regional escalation, involving Hezbollah and Iran could lead to a spike in rising oil prices and plunging financial markets. I'm not predicting that, but I think one of the things that the president's going to address is the importance of U.S. leadership, both in terms of the value proposition, supporting democratic policies in Israel and Ukraine, however imperfect they may be, and also that it's a matter of American national security that the U.S. lead in these two efforts. So I think it'll be a broad brush speech. He's going to obviously discuss, although I doubt if there'll be very many details, the $100 billion proposed supplemental to Israel, Ukraine, to Taiwan, and untold border security as well.
There's also the threat from DHS and American officials about increased violence here at home as a result of all of this. Let me ask you a bigger picture about Israel and what's been happening in recent days. We see a buildup along the border. We are now almost 2 weeks out from the horror of what happened on October 7th, and we are still hearing stories from families of those who were slaughtered about what happened to their families. We're hearing stories from survivors of the slaughter. We're hearing from the families of hostages, like we just heard a moment ago from that family member worried about her nephew's glasses, her 8-year-old nephew's glasses, and whether he has them while he's in captivity held by Hamas. Israel, though, is still striking Gaza. There was all this misinformation or confusing information at the very best about what happened at that hospital in Gaza. How does Israel maintain international support for what it's doing? How does it not lose it? How does it not go too far in Gaza?
You know, it's structurally built into this campaign. Disinformation and the waning of international legitimacy is a consequence of civilian deaths, destruction, and casualties. I mean, it's part of the Hamas narrative. In fact, it's part of the sort of trope of victimization that Hamas wants to create. The more Palestinians who are killed and injured, the greater the level of destruction, the more Israel's international legitimacy begins to erode. And I think we're 2 weeks in, right? I mean, the third week of this war begins next Saturday. I suspect that weather may have been a factor for delay. President's visit was a constraint, clearly. But I think it in the end was Israeli decision. I think the Israelis, though, have reached the conclusion, the longer they delay, the longer they wait, the more the prospect for international legitimacy to erode. I think the president had a very tough and frank conversation with the prime minister and his war cabinet yesterday about the day after. Exactly what are the objectives that the Israelis seek to achieve? What are the costs and what are the complications? The reference to 9/11, the president's notion that, quote, we made mistakes. The 2 longest wars in American history were generated in the wake of 9/11. This is not Israel's 9/11. 15,000, it's 15 9/11s. But the other reality, Katie, is that we didn't have a proximity problem with Al-Qaeda. Israel has a proximity problem with Hamas, and that's what they're going to try to address in an effort to deter and ultimately make it possible that what happened on October 7th won't reoccur. But it all comes down in the end. No matter how successful the Israeli operation is, it all comes down to the end. In the end, to the day after.
Yeah, do you have a sense that they have any idea what happens the day after, that there is a plan, that Benjamin Netanyahu is acting on what's best for the country and what happens next rather than his own political interests? Because there are a number of Israelis who are worried about that, including a number of op-eds that I've read.
I think Mr. Netanyahu is not in total control of Israel's military situation right now. He's expanded his government to include Benny Gantz, former defense minister, chief of staff, Gadi Eisenkot, chief of staff. I think there's a break, frankly, with respect to the prime minister conflating his political interests with the security and this military operation. It's the broader problem, Katie. Mr. Netanyahu or no Mr. Netanyahu, how do you operate in an area where you have 21,000 humans per square mile? How do you operate in an area with a tunnel system, 313 miles, half the number of miles of the New York subway system? How do you operate in a densely populated area where Hamas has had months to prepare? And I'm sure they'd move some of their assets farther south. The Israelis intend to operate in Gaza City. And how, adhering to the international laws, humanitarian law, do you minimize the extent of civilian casualties? Hamas is counting on hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinian casualties in an effort to radicalize and create the pretexts and justifications for Hezbollah, force Hezbollah to enter into this campaign. So it's this. I said it before, I'll say it again. This situation is going to get worse before it gets much worse. But I suspect that in the next few days, we're going to see a qualitatively and quantitatively different Israeli military campaign into Gaza than we've seen over the course of the last 15 years.
What you talk about is bleak. I've got to have you back on to talk a little bit more about whether there's another way to do this. Aaron David Miller, we're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining us as always. And coming up next, Sidney Powell pleads guilty and agrees to take the witness stand. What might she say?
I understand that the recommendation being made to the court as to this accusation on counts 1 through 6 that you be sentenced to 12 months of probation to run consecutive with one another.
I do.
You understand that the state is asking that a $6,000 fine be imposed, a restitution of $2,700 be paid to the state of Georgia, an apology letter be written to the citizens of the state of Georgia, that you truthfully testify at all hearings and proceedings and trials involving the co-defendants in this matter, and that you have no communication with co-defendants, media, or witnesses until this case has been completely closed against all defendants.
I do.
Ooh, an apology letter. Former Trump attorney Sidney Powell pleaded guilty today to illegally conspiring to interfere with Georgia's 2020 elections. As a part of her plea, Powell agreed to testify against her co-defendants, including former President Donald Trump. You heard her. She also has to write an apology letter to the people of Georgia. She is the second of Trump's 18 co-defendants to accept a plea deal in this racketeering case. Joining us now, NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett and MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin. All right, Laura. So what does it mean to have Sidney Powell take a plea agreement and plead guilty?
It's a big deal. She was one of his fiercest defenders. We saw her on air regularly spouting baseless conspiracy theories, and now she has flipped. She was in the room for key meetings with the former president, also with Rudy Giuliani, and now she has to testify against them at trial, or this whole deal collapses. She has to apologize. What's she going to say in that apology letter? What is she sorry for? How does she explain herself? I'm really interested to see all of that. We haven't seen it thus far. And she also has to hand over documents, which I think is another piece of this has sort of gone unnoticed, but she has to give everything over to prosecutors now in order for this to work.
Lisa, why now?
Katie, I think there are two reasons why now. The first of which is obviously her trial was scheduled to begin Monday, and so the window for Sidney Powell to cooperate and get the best possible deal was certainly winnowing. But the other factor in the why now has to do both with the timing of her criminal trial and the timing of ongoing civil litigation against her. Sidney Powell in particular is facing ongoing litigation from Dominion, which you'll remember famously settled with Fox for hundreds of millions of dollars. They are continuing to sue Sidney Powell herself for $1.3 billion. That's the case she's been unsuccessful in trying to dismiss. And discovery is ongoing in that case. And that, as Sidney Powell told the court about 2 weeks ago, sort of puts her in an untenable position. She has to choose between the invocation of her Fifth Amendment rights, if she had gone to her criminal trial, and what it would mean to invoke those Fifth Amendment rights in a civil proceeding where a jury can draw adverse inferences, and or she could have been sanctioned for not participating in discovery. And given what's at stake financially in that case, that intersection was probably not one that Sidney Powell could have abided, especially with the ongoing criminal risk.
I don't love the idea of being sued for $1.3 billion personally. I can say that. Lisa, Kenneth Chesebro still has his trial set for Monday, October 23rd. That's Monday. Does this mean that Sidney Powell testifies against him?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a possibility that Sidney Powell testifies with respect to the broader conspiracy. But when you think about the allegations against Sidney Powell in this case, most of the charges against her, all the charges against her, centered on a scheme to open up Coffee County, Georgia voting machines. There are a handful of other allegations against her, but they largely concern things that don't concern Ken Chesebro. They concern, for example, that infamous press conference she, Rudy Giuliani, and Jenna Ellis had, where she accused Dominion of somehow being in cahoots with Hugo Chavez to try and interfere with the United States election. They also include the December 18th Oval Office meeting where they talked about seizing the voting machines. But again, not something that implicates Ken Chesebro.
All right, let me ask you about the special counsel, Jack Smith. Does Sidney Powell...
He's watching all of this carefully.
Talk to him.
Well, if I'm Powell's attorney, I would say now is your moment. If you are in a position where you're ready to cooperate with these state prosecutors,
do it with the feds as well before they can even get to the point of considering charging you, because you only sort of have a limited window where you're
useful. Do we know
useful.
that they're getting to the point of considering charging her? Because so far no one else has been charged but Donald Trump.
No one else has been charged, but we have reason to believe that she was one of the unindicted co-conspirators in that case. And so if you want to at least ward off the possibility of down the line them coming to you, you might want to be the first one to make that overture.
So Monday again for Ken Chesebro. Chesebro, who knows how to say his name. We keep getting conflicting.
I'm pretty sure it's Ches.
It's Ches? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's Ches. Does he make a plea deal after this?
He hasn't signaled that he's interested in that. In fact, he's been like sort of vociferously trying to fight this, and so far hasn't found much success in the courts. And so I think by all accounts, he's going to go forward with that trial on Monday. But before, a couple hours ago, we didn't know about Sidney Powell, so all bets are off. Really.
Kenneth Chesebro. My apologies to Mr. Chesebro. It is Chesebro. I'm going to listen to Laura Jarrett. Laura, thank you very much. Lisa Rubin, I appreciate it. Coming up next, the U.S.
Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. क्या मांगू मैं तुझसे भोले, दूर हो गए संकट ये सारे। क्या मांगू मैं तुझसे भोले, दूर हो गए संकट ये सारे। नाम तेरा लिया तूने सब है दिया, नाम तेरा लिया तूने सब है दिया। सारे संसार पर है तेरी नजर, ओ शिव शंकर, ओ शिव शंकर, ओ शिव शंकर, ओ शिव शंकर। तेरे दर पे आने से ही दिल को चैन मिलता है। जब जब देखूं तुझे मैं, मन मेरा खिलता है। देखूं मैं जिधर तू दिखे है उधर, देखूं मैं जिधर तू दिखे है उधर। तूने खुशियों से भर दिया है दिल का नगर, ओ शिव शंकर, ओ शिव शंकर, ओ शिव शंकर, ओ शिव शंकर। ओम नमः शिवाय, ओम नमः शिवाय, ओम नमः शिवाय, ओम नमः शिवाय। बिखरा था टूट के पहले तूने मुझको संवारा है। मेरा भोला साथ खड़ा था, मैंने जब भी पुकारा है। ना समझ बेखबर तेरी सब पे नजर, ना समझ बेखबर तेरी सब पे नजर। संग तू है खड़ा तो है कैसा डर, ओ शिव शंकर, 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 ओ शिव